What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and in this video we will be discussing probably the single most popular and requested topic in the comment sections of our Boku no Hero videos. And that is the real reason why Deku's father still hasn't appeared in the story, including both the anime and the manga. I have to say that we have gotten a ton of support from you guys on our Boku no Hero videos lately, and I am extremely grateful for that. And I can tell you from reading the comments that a lot of you really wanted me to talk about the real reason behind Deku's father's absence. So, because you requested it, in this video I'll be doing just that. I will be talking about all the most popular theories about the true identity of Deku's father. From theories that he is just an ordinary guy, to theories that he's actually a villain, and even theories claiming that Deku's mom has been deliberately lying about the dad this whole time. And at the end of the video, I will give you my personal opinion on the real reason that Deku's dad is still missing from the story. By the way, I realized that these images are not of Deku's father, they are Deku disguised as an adult. But because we haven't seen Deku's father and we have no idea what he looks like, I thought that Deku's cosplay would be cool to use. And it would be pretty funny if Deku's dad actually looked like this. I mean, let's be real, in this disguise, Deku kinda looks like a shady guy on the street who would try to sell you a fake Rolex. But anyways, to start with, I will be addressing some of the theories that I got from you guys on Twitter and Instagram, and if you want to weigh in after watching this video, feel free to follow me at Anime Uproar. And if I get some really good responses, I will make another video talking about them. And of course, if you enjoyed this type of content and you want to see more, you can let me know by leaving a like. And if you happen to be new to the channel, feel free to subscribe and Detroit smash that notification bell. By the way, there will be some Season 3 spoilers in this video for you anime-only fans, but nothing beyond Season 3 content. If you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, you have been warned. So, what exactly do we know about Deku's dad? We know that his name is Hisashi Midoriya, that he is legally married to Deku's mom Inko, and that he works outside of Japan. We also know that he has a quirk which allows him to breathe fire. His name Hisashi is a play on words in Japanese. And when combined with Buri to form Hisashiburi, it essentially works out to, "It's been a while since I've seen you last." This tells us that the author of MHA, Kohei Horikoshi, is well aware that Deku's father's absence will be noticed by the fans, and he is having a little bit of fun with it. And that leads us to the very first theory, which is that Deku's dad is just an ordinary person. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about how suspicious it is for Deku's dad to leave his family for a long time and work overseas. And because of this, they often conclude that there is something else going on. However, I have to say that in Japan, it is actually not that unusual for someone to work in another country or travel a lot for work. As you probably know, Japan is home to many large international companies, from Sony and Toshiba to Kawasaki and Honda, and that's only naming a few. All of these companies have offices in many countries throughout the world, and it is not unusual for a Japanese employee in one of these companies to be sent abroad for a longer period of time. So, is it possible that Horikoshi is going to just bring Deku's dad into the story at some point in the future, and that he will indeed turn out to be just a regular guy? It's definitely possible, and Horikoshi could be having a blast watching people theorize about the father's true identity, when in reality there is nothing special about him at all. Felix on Twitter believes this to be the case, and Mika Holland thinks that Deku's father may never become relevant in the story, which would be kinda cool, as it would emphasize that the greatest hero doesn't necessarily need a lineage of greatness to be great himself. But on the other hand, if we look at other popular shonen series like Naruto, Magi, and One Piece, we know that it is also possible that the main character's father will turn out to be someone very important. This has happened many times before. The next theory is that Deku's father is actually the flame hero Endeavor, aka Enji Todoroki Shoto's father. This theory has become popular because Endeavor has a fire-based quirk, and we know that Deku's dad also has a fire-based quirk, aka breathing fire. Ores Cosplay mentioned this theory on Instagram, and it's been brought up many times before in the comments. Those who believe in this theory often say that since Endeavor is so cruel to his family, it isn't a stretch to think that he might have cheated on his wife and secretly fathered Deku. But personally, I do not buy this theory, and here's why. For one, Endeavor is a celebrity, one of the top-ranked pro heroes, so if he was Deku's father and Deku didn't realize it, then it would mean that Deku's mother Inko has been lying to him and manipulating him for his entire life. But come on, just look at that face. Is that the face of someone who would lie and manipulate her own son? I mean, look at her, she is so freaking cute and adorable. Ugh, I'm not crying, shut up. Anyway, another reason why I don't buy this theory is that although it is true that quirks are often passed down from parents to children in some capacity, there are plenty of characters in the story who have similar quirks but don't appear to be related, like Kirishima and Tetsu both having hardening quirks. And not to mention that water-based quirks are possessed by a number of people, including Koda and his parents, but also other pro heroes like Manual and Backdraft, who don't seem to be related to Koda in any way. Next up is the theory that Deku's father is actually All Might. According to this theory, the real reason why All Might picked Deku out of all people to inherit One for All is because Deku is actually his son. Those who believe in this theory point out that All Might was also born quirkless, so this is something that Deku could have inherited from his alleged father. And over on Twitter, Luna mentioned this theory and suggested that maybe the reason why Inko and Toshinori kept the truth hidden from Deku all this time is because they want to protect him, since we all know that the family of the symbol of peace would be a major target for villains. I can see where this type of logic is coming from, but for this to be true, it presupposes that Deku's mom Inko and All Might have both been carrying on an elaborate charade around Deku this entire time, because their interactions in the anime and manga suggest that Inko and All Might have no prior relationship. All Might also would have been famous even back when Deku was a baby, so unless Toshinori used his Small Might form to seduce Inko and she wasn't aware of who he was, this theory would require the kind of elaborate cover-up that I just don't think either Inko or All Might are capable of. And if this were the case, then what about Hisashi Midoriya? Did Inko just make him up? Or is he just some guy that thinks Deku is his son but really isn't? Again, I think Inko is way too nice and sincere of a person to be a part of something like this. Look at that face! And then we have the theory that Deku's dad is a villain. This is an extremely popular theory in the comment sections of our videos, and it basically states that the reason Deku's father is away is that he is busy being a villain. Ethan mentioned this theory on Twitter, and MZ Lambchops mentioned it on Instagram. In this scenario, Hisashi lied to his family that he was taking a job abroad while in reality he is leading a secret life as a villain. And presumably Inko would not be aware of the truth, so this takes away the need for Inko to be part of some massive cover-up. To be honest, this would definitely be a plausible twist to the story. I've seen quite a few people saying that perhaps Deku's father will turn out to be the final villain in the series, and Deku will have to defeat him, even though fighting his own father will pose a huge internal conflict for him. And this would then provide exactly the type of drama that is needed for a great final arc. I get the feeling that half of the MHA fanbase would like this kind of twist and the other half would hate it and see it as too predictable. But either way, it would definitely be a way to bring extra drama and internal conflict into the story. My own take on this theory is that although there is no evidence, it is plausible and similar twists have happened before in popular shonen series. Still, this is not my personal theory. Next, we have the theory that Deku's dad is not just any villain, he is in fact All for One. This is another very popular theory, and as All for One has finally made his appearance in season 3 of the anime, I am noticing more and more people suggesting that All for One could be Deku's father. Gunvolt had this idea on Twitter, and Will Rupee had the same idea on Instagram. The origins of this theory stem from a few factors, including the fact that Deku's doctor, the one who told him that he doesn't have a quirk, appears to be the same doctor who works directly for All For One. I discussed this in greater detail in a previous video about Deku potentially having been born with a quirk that was stolen before he realized he had it. And I will link that video in the description if you want to check it out. The gist of it is that according to this theory, the doctor who works for All For One was the same doctor who was seeing Deku because All For One wanted to keep an eye on his son. And perhaps the doctor stole Deku's quirk because All For One wanted to keep his son out of danger by preventing him from becoming a hero. Presumably, All For One would have gotten together with Inko before sustaining his terrible injuries, so he would have looked like a normal person and could have introduced himself as a guy named Hisashi Midoriya. And Inko would have just accepted it without realizing his true identity. We know that All For One has lived for many generations. He created the original One For All quirk, which was already passed down for 9 generations if we include Deku. So we can safely assume that All For One at some point stole a quirk that allowed him to live way beyond one lifetime and perhaps even stay young forever. So Inko could have thought that he was just a normal man her age. All For One's injuries would also explain why he hasn't returned to his family for so many years. The way he looks now after his big battle with All Might 5 or 6 years earlier, he certainly could not fool Inko into thinking that he was just a regular guy. All For One has also often been compared to Darth Vader because he wears a dark mask as a result of injuries he sustained in his past, similarly to Vader. So some people believe that just like Luke finds out that Vader is his father in Star Wars, Deku will find out that All For One is his father at a critical time in the series. We know that Horikoshi references Star Wars often along with other Western franchises like Marvel Comics. So this theory claims that All For One turning out to be Deku's father will just be one of multiple parallels and homages to Star Wars in Boku no Hero. Even though this theory might be a bit unoriginal after Star Wars already did it, I think it could also be interesting if executed well. I personally don't hate the idea, but for this to make sense there would have to be some reason why All For One chose to marry and have a child with Inko in particular. Is there something special about her that attracted him? Did he just fall in love with her? Or was she someone he picked at random because he wanted a successor? Is this perhaps related to the fact that Inko reminds All Might of his former mentor Nana Shimura, who was herself a former user of One For All? And she also just happens to be Shigaraki's grandmother. But if Deku really is All For One's son, then why don't we see All For One taking more of an interest in Deku? And instead he seems to be really interested in Shigaraki and treats Shigaraki like a son. Ultimately, I think that the theory that All For One is Deku's father is pretty unlikely, although still more likely than both the Endeavor and All Might theories. And finally, we have the theory that Deku's dad is some sort of undercover agent. My own theory is that if Deku's dad is not just an ordinary guy, and it is entirely possible that he is, then he is probably some type of special hero who works as a secret agent or undercover agent, either in another country or even in Japan. And so the real reason why Deku's dad is missing from the story is that as an undercover agent, he is forced to keep his real life a secret and keep communication with his real family to a minimum. Otherwise, he might arouse suspicion from the people he is secretly investigating. I came up with this theory because I feel that Deku's dad turning out to be an undercover agent would be one of the few legitimate ways to explain his absence in a way that doesn't make him look bad. In this case, Deku's dad is not a deadbeat or a villain. He is doing important work and fighting for justice, but his work is top secret and dangerous, so he has to keep his family out of it as much as possible. It would be especially interesting if Deku's dad was infiltrating a major group of villains and pretending to be a villain. And so when he first finds out, Deku thinks that his dad really became a villain, and this causes a lot of tension. Until later, Deku learns that his dad is actually a good guy, but he couldn't tell him because of the nature of his job. If I had to pick a theory other than Deku's dad is just an ordinary guy, undercover agent or spy would be my theory of choice. Although Misty Chronexia's theory that Deku's father is actually Giovanni from Pokemon is a good one too. But let me know what you guys think. Do you buy into any of the theories mentioned in this video, or do you have a better theory of your own? If you do have a better theory, be sure to reply to the threads on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar and let me know. I will mention my favorite responses in a future video, and if I come across some particularly good theories, I might make a whole new video on them. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like to let me know. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe, and Detroit, smash that notification bell. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.